Hello there. Part one was the breakdown of anxiety. Part two, the breakthrough from anxiety. And part three is the route back to anxiety. Now, not many people will tell you this because they don't want you to go back to anxiety if you found a strong ego defense. For me, that ego defense is so fragile, I need to tell you the path that can happen just in case your ego has lied to you and painted a picture that isn't true to cover up the anxiety, the trauma, the identity crisis that we spoke about in part one. Now, you have the love, you project it, you feel it, you sympathise with people and you're grateful. You have a goal, you wake up every day at 5 o'clock, you have these rules and regulations, these policies, these procedures, you know how to keep this head straight. The egoic mind was fragile and weak, never strong enough for you. You broke through that and you found the spirit. Unfortunately, the spirit can make you avoid negativity, cut friends and family off, not speak to people if they don't say what you want them to say, if they don't big you up, and you'll feel that you project love and you won't get anything back in this transaction, and you think that you're better than that and you don't need it, but you'll start to subtly creep back to the egoic mind's behaviour, which is polarisation again. Now, I'm not saying that this love and this feeling of spirit and it's all doesn't exist. It does exist, but it has the ability to make you go into a super conscious state, a super ego, a superman, the overman, God. And God is going to have an ego. He's going to say he's better and he's going to be technically talking better than ever before to be able to get out of all the stuff he got out of before. So he'll be doing all the same behaviours, but he'll be covering it up very articulately, beautifully, ego defending it, twisting words and saying that there's paradoxes and different dynamics to the reasons now. This was not the ego before, and now this is a spirit, so it's kind of like it's okay that the spirit can technically be the ego when the ego wants to come out, and it's bullshit. You've polarised, you've got stuck, you've got obsessed with the feeling of anxiety being gone, where you're not being human anymore. Now, this is the stage that no one tells you about. It's the stage that makes you the most mad, because you was unconscious for such a long time, you forgot that your experience the day after you awoke from unconsciousness didn't mean that you was always going to stay awake. It meant that you could always easily be unconscious. So you start to mirror and reflect bad stuff because you're unconscious again, but you're unconscious with a super ego now, with a super spiritual I'm positive, I'm not speaking to you, or I'm going to sell you my story. This is going to help you, so you need to listen. I need to break down that because that's pain. You're in pain and I know how to deal with pain, and that person isn't in your pain, and you're just frustrating them, you're just pissing them off, you're just Plato's allegory of the cave, you're like going to get killed. So what does this mean? We lose that spirituality, we lose that bliss. That felt so good, I don't want to let that go. Well, it makes you realise one thing, that if the ego and the spirit both do exactly the same thing, which is different illusions and stories, One makes you feel a fragile greatness, one makes you feel a very strong greatness. But what's the middle ground? Now there's one theory which is quite simple. You're an evolutionary process that experiences this egoic mind and spiritual love, and you can perceive any reality of those two that you wish to perceive. And this makes a lot of sense if you're intellectual, if you understand human psychology and history and evolution and the possibilities of the future. But there's a little part of your insightful, perceptive human mind that says that loses purpose, that loses God, that loses that feeling of bliss. That's uncomfortable. I don't like evolutionary process with no meaning. Now, this is man's perception on consciousness. And I've realised that we have to be more than consciousness. And at the moment, scientific studies and mathematics have only proved that consciousness is everything and everywhere. That's all that's really they can say. But for me, consciousness created maths and science. So it's like a hammer that made a hammer. So how did you make this hammer? I made it with this hammer. No, you don't say that, because that would be backwards. That would be unplausible to create the tool to make the tool. But that's what has happened. And now you could say this is getting foggy, this is making you lost. I'm preparing you. You will have your biggest low, and you will call this an egoic death, even though the ego doesn't exist. And you will feel spiritual and love, and you will lose this as well if the process is maintained and you keep asking questions and keep chasing the rabbit holes. You will break through another level back to anxiety because your fingernails have broken on the cave walls, and you are dropping now into an eternal abyss which you believe is insanity. And if you project or believe strong enough in that idea of insanity, you will become insane. You will become completely medicated for the rest of your life. And we've seen this. Insanity exists. Madness exists. People talk to themselves all the time in prison institutions, in mental institutions, even down the street, on our streets, you see this. And it's because humans have only one real purpose, and that is to distract their mind from insanity, because they can never work out consciousness, and because they are already an imagined system, a pattern completely made up of code, an enigma, and you wish to study yourself and know the start and the end as if time and space even exists, you will suffer. You will suffer for this longing of finding, and it doesn't exist, but it only perceivably exists as an insight that you have, that you are completely living, breathing and awake in a dream. That is most likely within a dream, and most likely within a dream with parallel universes, telepathic individuals, complete and utter simultaneous consciousnesses, multiple universes, parallel universes, different levels of consciousness, and consciousness all contained in this far greater being, energy, source and power that doesn't even rate anything we do no more than we look at a trail of ants and look at it in any awe and amazement, unless it's in huge 16 screen HD. And that is where the intellect gets a door closed right on its nose, because all perceptions have gone. You see the emptiness is no longer empty because you're comparing it to a relation that correlates with something else or collaborates with something else. Emptiness is just vast emptiness, and emptiness that can't be observed objectively or subjectively means we are no more than an illusion. Get your whole body, physical, mind as one, and heart, the spiritual heart that you can hang on to, connected with that, and that will hold you in great stead